give a delight welcome to Leah Buley.
Oh, thank you. Oh, let me hold on to that. I might need that clicker. We'll see. Thank you for that really fantastic welcome. How are you guys doing? That is abysmal. How are you guys doing? Wake up, everybody. Yes, good, okay. Well, I am thrilled to be here personally because the good folks at iSight have given me an opportunity to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, which is basically my own journey in user experience and how I have found my way towards being an agent of change in organizations large and small. So I want to share that story with you guys, and hopefully there will be some elements that are relevant for you. So, let's see, does it work from far? It does, okay. So this is me. Let me start with just telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Leah Buley. I live in San Francisco, not too far away, and I work for Intuit, which is a company that makes financial software to improve people's lives. Some of our best-known products are TurboTax, QuickBooks, Quicken, things that perhaps you guys use. And I've been designing products and services of a digital nature for about 15 years. But I didn't start out actually as a designer or a user experience person. I started out as a front-end engineer a long time ago. Or maybe even a better word would be like HTML hack. I was a very self-taught individual. And I really enjoyed the process of making websites, web apps, stuff like that. But eventually I started to feel like I wanted to have a little more influence over what got designed as well. So like any good hack, I started to just tinker with tools. I started playing around with Photoshop and Illustrator and Visio and pushing elements and pixels around the screen. And at the same time, I was reading a lot of blogs and discussion forums, and I discovered this term that was like nirvana for me, user experience. It was so exciting to me when I sort of first learned about this concept because I felt that it encapsulated everything that I valued and held dear. This idea that we can make technology more humane, more enjoyable, more productive for people, and that it doesn't have to be degrading to be kind of working with software. And I wanted to be a person who helped make that possible. So I made it official. I decided to kind of make the transition from being kind of a code jockey to more of a designer. And I started on my journey as what I would consider a user experience team of one. And what that meant for me was that I worked in a number of different organizations over a period of time where they didn't necessarily know this term user experience or didn't necessarily believe that it was something that they needed, but I thought that I was a secret covert operative, bringing it into the place, nonetheless. And it was interesting work. It was really fun work. I was doing a lot of kind of user interface design and trying to make products better and trying to work from the ground up. But at the same time, it was often very frustrating because I felt that I was trying to convince people of something that they didn't believe or understand. And that made me feel kind of embattled. And furthermore, I didn't always feel super confident that I was doing it right or that I had all the kind of credentials and bona fides to do it really well. And I would go to conferences and I would talk to other people doing this work and I would hear the same point of view. It's like, why don't they get it? I have to convince them. It's so frustrating. So that kind of frustration eventually led me to want to grow professionally. And so that's when I left my journey as a kind of serial UX team of one, and I joined a user experience consultancy called Adaptive Path, based in San Francisco, where I felt like I would surely learn how to do UX the right way. And it was a really interesting experience because the first thing that I saw was that I came at the process of user experience from the screen first. I would kind of get a design challenge. I would sit down in front of a monitor. I would put on my headphones, and I would sort of push pixels for days trying to figure out what the solution to that was. And what I saw at Adaptive Path was that the stuff you make on the screen, the resulting products, digital products that end up on a screen, they are merely the output of a lot of other thinking that has to go into that process. The kind of the wireframes that you lay out, what those really are a manifestation of a number of business needs and user needs coming together to form real and concrete constraints. The screen that you design is actually the output of a whole process of synthesis, iteration, refinement, simplification, and that process involves other people giving input into that process. The screens that you design are really ultimately just moments in what is effectively a broader experience. And if you can pinpoint those interesting moments, that helps you to identify what information, what affordances, what pieces are really important in those sort of screens or designs, those really tactical outputs. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, what I learned at Adaptive Path was that when you are designing a screen, when you are designing a product, if you're doing it from a truly user-centered point of view, you are asking an organization to change the way it thinks about its customers and the way that it works. And that's a really hard thing to do, really ambitious thing to do. But it's what's required to achieve the kind of goals that we have as people who care about user experience. So that was an eye-opening experience. And what happened for me was it made me realize that a lot of the thinking that I was doing at Adaptive Path could actually have been totally applicable in my roles as a user experience team of one. I just didn't necessarily know it at the time. And so that led me, fast forward to today, to I work it into it, but I also recently wrote a book for Rosenfeld Media called The User Experience Team of One, which encapsulates many of these ideas. 1 second. Yeah. So the user experience team of one, it's book length. There's a lot in it, but the basic fundamentals of the book are just a mindset shift towards some of those attitudes that I just laid out. And if you boil it all down, there's just a couple of core principles that sort of pervade throughout the book. So I want to share those basic principles, in my view, the secrets of the user experience team of one. I want to share a few quick methods that are really low overhead, super easy, that anybody can actually pick up and use if you're interested in serving as a kind of UX ninja. And then I want to speak a little bit about how some of these same principles apply at scale in large organizations like Intuit, where I work now. So the secrets of the UX team of one, very simple, in a nutshell. There are a lot of what the speakers this morning have been talking about already. Number one, truly listen. Listen not only to your business counterparts about the needs that they're expressing, but more importantly, listen to your customers about the needs that they have. It is shocking how often I meet somebody who claims to be a user experience professional who never actually spends any time with customers or users. In my view, you cannot call yourself a user experience practitioner if you don't have face-to-face time with customers sometimes. So truly listening is a core secret of the UX team of one. The next big secret is making things together. That process of sort of synthesis and iteration and refinement and simplification that I mentioned, that works better when there's more than one person doing it. When you've got a number of minds applied to a problem, that kind of combining and recombining and simplification gets better. And if you're a UX team of one, or if you're in an organization or even a team where you're not working with a lot of other UX professionals on a regular basis, you're probably still working with other people on a regular basis. And you can sort of harvest their brains to participate in this process of making things together. So we'll talk about a couple ways you can do that. The next sort of secret of the UX team of one is a little paradoxical, I think, which is helping the people that you work with identify what's sort of most important in the user experience and to identify what's good enough to get right versus what doesn't matter so much. I think when I first started doing user experience work, I felt that my job was like a Tetris game, to cram as many features and requests as possible into like the least offensive design you could create. And I think the reality is our jobs are to help our organizations understand what elements are most important in the user experience and what we can do less of or not so much of or not so well, and it's just fine. So that sense of prioritization is really important. And then the last secret of the UX team of one, which encapsulates many of these ideas, is just bringing everyone into this process so it's not a black box and they can feel like it's their process too. So let's talk about some quick methods for how you can do this. And we'll start with the last one, inviting people in. It doesn't actually have to be that complex. Even really simple structures like workshops where you get everybody to come in for an hour and paste up all the kind of sort of moments of your experience, the most important moments of your experience on a wall, and invite a cross-functional team to identify what's good and identify what's bad can be a really powerful way to start a discussion about how you can improve the user experience. So you can give them 2 colors of sticky notes. You can say, these are the bad sticky notes, these are the good sticky notes. Write everything you see that's bad, write everything you see that's good, and we put it on the wall. And that forum for a physical and kind of interactive discussion is a way to get the ball rolling on inviting people in. Another technique that I think is kind of interesting, starts in a kind of personal place and then it kind of gets more outward focused, is a UX questionnaire. And this idea is just super simple. Ask yourself some basic questions about the product and do it with some rigor. And you can kind of, maybe the questions differ based on what your product is, but some sample ones might be, who is the team that I have to work with on this product? Who actually gets to make decisions about this stuff? What is our strategy in the market? Why do we think we're different from our competitors? What's special about us? What are the most important tasks and scenarios that are critical to this user experience? What are our business goals? How will we measure success? What are our users' goals? Do we know them? Have we validated them? And asking those questions, maybe you don't have all the answers right now, but it helps you to realize there are people in your organization you probably need to reach out to get more information. So it can be a catalyst for you to seek out more data, which is great. So those are a couple quick inviting people in methods. Now, as far as truly listening, first start inwards. I think the listening tour is a really helpful technique for just connecting one-on-one with the cross-functional team who impacts your user experience and learning from them what are their priorities for the product. How do they measure their successful contributions? What's most important for them to get right? What's least important for them to get right? This is a great way for you to build some relationships and build trust, which is important. It's a great way for you to identify if there's a lack of shared vision. It's a great way for you to understand what's motivating engineering, marketing, product management, et cetera. But that's just inward-facing. The most important piece, of course, is to be outward-facing. So user research, I think, is the core of what we do, obviously. And I think it's common to think that if you want to do user research right, you have to invest a lot of time and a lot of money, and you have to recruit in this very rigorous way. And those are good. But if you can't do that, that's still not an excuse for not doing it. So even kind of quick and dirty research can be very effective. Rather than taking the time to create a massive protocol, you can quickly do a mental model of some basic questions or assumptions you have about who your users are, and then think about how you can go out and validate or get more data on that. Often just going into the field and going where your users are and kind of observing can be a really interesting starting point. But what I find actually is that once you go out into the field, almost like an archaeological expedition, if you can sort of bring back proof, it's very exciting for people. I found a three-toed sloth. They exist. There is a whole new kind of island colony out there. And so what I like to try to do is bring back artifacts from the field that help people understand customers' needs and points of view more kind of deeply. One example for that is to make things together with the customers even. So this is an example of a journey line template that we'll often use to ask people to kind of map out their own experience over time with a product or a service or an important event in life. It's really simple. This is like you have the vertical axis, which is just happy to sad, and then you have the horizontal axis, which is just kind of time past to present. And you ask people to kind of show the emotional highs and lows that they had with an experience and why. If you bring these things back into the office, it can really, really speak volumes for your partners about where to improve the experience. The sort of next big secret, making things together. For me, this has really been all about getting comfortable with low-fidelity making techniques, specifically sketching, and being willing to kind of get up and go to the whiteboard. One thing that I found when I went to Adaptive Path, I didn't have a background as a kind of, I didn't have an MFA. I wasn't a fine artist. And some of the people that I worked with did. And what would happen was we'd be in meetings, we'd all have really interesting ideas, and one of them would get up and start sketching something out on the whiteboard. And even though I was sort of talking about something that I thought was incredibly important and intelligent, everyone's attention would just go like to the whiteboard, and then they were captivated. And this made me deeply envious. So I decided, screw that, I'm going to get good at sketching. I'm going to become a whiteboard ninja too, and really own the ability to kind of capture people's imaginations by creating visuals, creating a visual language so we can have a shared visual kind of picture of what we're talking about. And so spending time just actually practicing sketching skills was a very important sort of starting point for me in that. And then when you actually get into the process of sketching, it was interesting for me to discover that there are different types of sketching that are relevant at different times in the process. So taking time to do what I would call generative sketching, where you're not doing detailed product design yet at all, but you're kind of going broad on a variety of different ways you could solve a particular problem, can be a really interesting way for getting unstuck from your first interesting idea of a solution to a design challenge. When I first started doing user interface work, I realized I was always just designing my first best idea, and that was sort of where we ended up. So this can be helpful for that. And then, of course, even for more detailed sketching, not having to waste the time to go super high fidelity in terms of wireframing, but being able to do quick kind of rough sketches with an agile team and build stuff really quickly, to test stuff out really quickly, is a powerful technique for UX teams of one. There's a technique we use a lot at Adaptive Path that I think is fun to bring back into different organizations, which is, we call it sketchboards. One second. And so that basically just combines a lot of these sketching techniques into a kind of shared canvas where you can see, you can almost look across the experience and see, here's kind of how we would sketch out the experience all the way from, sort of registration, first-time use, into repeat use. And then further down the canvas, you can see different explorations at each point in the process for how you could do that. So maybe the first-time use we do, as few clicks as possible, or an alternative would be that it's more of a questionnaire style, or an alternative would be, X, Y, and Z. So you can use this interesting kind of large-scale canvas to help a team see the variety of possibilities inherent in a design solution. And then lastly, a couple quick techniques for recognizing good enough. I think the most important thing, actually, I still go back to testing. I think the user experience field has had a bit of an allergic kind of reaction to usability of late, because it minimizes what we do. But then at the end of the day, if you can validate that the most important tasks are actually possible to do, that can be sort of a silver bullet in your organization. So that's, I think, a really important technique. Another interesting technique, and I love that Leslie Mata was talking about measuring. This is a really lightweight and somewhat unscientific way to measure, but to at least introduce the thinking into your organization, is this concept of a UX health check, which was first introduced at Comcast by two designers there, Livia Labache and Austin Govella. The idea is basically you get a cross-functional team together, you break your product into different sections, and then you say, this section, we want it to be like as good as the Facebook wall. That section, it should be really as good as like Amazon's checkout process. This section, it should be as good as the iTunes cover flow experience. And then for each section, you say, how good are we? And you kind of measure that delta, and you talk about how you want to get better. So it's a kind of thumb in the wind way of measuring how you are, but it's at least a way to start a conversation about what good looks like and to measure that change over time. So those are some quick methods you could bring back home if you wanted to. It happens from time to time that I meet a joker in the peanut gallery who says, you're not a UX team of one anymore. How does any of this apply to what you do? You work in a really big company. And it's true. So Intuit has a big mission. We're there to improve people's financial lives. It's publicly traded, and it's got big revenue expectations. We make $4.15 billion each year, and we need to make more. We've got a lot of employees, which is a hell of a lot of people to bring in and make things with. So how does this work at scale? Well, Intuit actually has a really unique innovation culture, and I would love another 20 minutes just to talk about that in its entirety. But one particular aspect of our innovation culture is a program we call Design for Delight. And the idea of Design for Delight is actually, it's that Intuit believes that design thinking should be a capability that every single employee has access to. So a number of people have gone and gotten training at the Stanford D School kind of design thinking program, and they came back in and trained up people throughout the organization in, certainly in product development and design, but also in legal and finance, in HR, in facilities, in all kinds of places. They trained these people up on the methods for design thinking. And the idea then is that those people serve as innovation catalysts for creative problem solving wherever they are in our organization. And the whole premise of Design for Delight at Intuit is that there are 3 core principles, and if you learn those 3 principles, there's a bunch of methods in any of those principles, but as a catalyst, you just re-anchor to these principles again and again and again. The first is deep customer empathy, so being willing to go into the field. And based on this principle, Intuit has operationalized extremely, extremely fast customer access. We have the ability to kind of put in a request and then get access to customers just within a day, or within 4 or 5 days on average. You can kind of be out in the field with a customer. We also have office hours where we bring people in regularly on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're just available in our labs for us to test ideas with. So interesting ways to kind of get good customer empathy. The other principle is go broad to go narrow, which is kind of similar to the generative sketching concept, to commit to have a lot of good ideas before you refine on any one particular solution. And then the third principle is rapid experimentation with customers. And we have gone after this one like gangbusters, in particular aligning with lean startup methodologies and forming our own lean start-in program where teams do really rapid experimentation. So this can be operationalized in a pretty big way, but when you get right down to it, it's still those same principles. Deep customer empathy is about listening. Going broad to going narrow is really about making things together as a team, kind of being in a generative way. Rapid experiments with customers are about knowing kind of what the most important thing is to get right and learning whether you've gotten that right. And the whole core concept is about bringing people into the process. So that's the kind of the way we do it at Intuit. But it's, again, just these 4 secrets. So the main thing to remember is you have it all in you. If you care about user experience and you're passionate, it isn't actually about being a fantastic fine artist. It isn't about being a totally amazing HTML kind of ninja. It's about the right mentality and about a kind of open and sort of receptive attitude. If you're interested in the book, you can use this discount code for 20% off. And I borrowed liberally from the Noun Project, which is a fantastic resource when creating this deck. So here's attributions of all the beautiful artwork that you saw in this. If any of you are interested in chatting with me more, feel free to get in touch, and thanks so much for your time.